Hey guys, KK, and thank you for joining me on a new video on my channel. Over the past few weeks we've concentrated on the beginner to intermediate side of Unreal Engine with landscapes and landscape materials. Sticking with the theme of beginner to intermediate, I want to move over to different tools you can use in the engine, and this video is going to be about the Foliage Tool. I feel from beginners the Foliage Tool is overseen because of the name foliage, but it's not just foliage you can use in the Foliage Tool. In our community there's a guy in there just created a scene like a haunted house with a kitchen on the end, and even scenes like that you can use the Foliage Tool to place broken bottles and paper everywhere, you know, if you want to create that kind of scene. It's a very nice scene. I'll leave a link to that in the description for his video on that. But in this video, like I say, it's going to be about the Foliage Tool and just the basics of it. I could make this like a 3-hour long video showing you every aspect of the Foliage Tool, but the chances of using every aspect of the Foliage Tool is very slim, as there is more convenient ways, and the more you become to know Unreal Engine, the more you'll learn these convenient ways. But like I say, just the basics today. By the end of this tutorial we'll have a little scene set up here with trees and grass and rocks and bushes all set up in the scene. That will look nice. Well, I'll try to make it look nice. I don't want to go into high details of changing material instances and all that. Just want to showcase the Foliage Tool. This cabin is free for the month at the time of this video. Epic release assets from the marketplace for free every month. You should always keep your eye on that. Even if you see something and you think, I'll never use that, down the line, a couple of years time, if you're still using Unreal Engine, you might be on some sort of different path then, and you'll think, oh well, I got that asset years ago. You know, always get the free stuff, and that's where this is from. So like, keep in mind, I said at the time of this video, so this asset might not be free no more, but I'll leave a link to this marketplace asset in the description below. We'll also be using the Quixel trees, which are quite new to Unreal. I'll leave a link for that in the description. Then Quixel trees are permanently free for Unreal Engine users, and we'll also be using assets from Quixel Bridge, which is here, the little plus. That's Quixel Bridge, you should know that by now if you're at this stage. So yeah, let's get straight onto the Foliage Tool. So if we come to the top left here, go to Foliage, you see here, click the drop down in menu, go to Foliage or Shift and 3, and you'll be presented with this. Like I was saying earlier, you'll not use 60% of this tool, but the main ones I use are Paint, Single and Erase. The Paint mode is where you mass paint onto your landscape, and the Single mode is where you paint individual assets. The Erase tool is self-explanatory, it erases things. Below this you have your brush size, which is also self-explanatory. It changes the size at which your brush can paint with. And you have a paint density. This is how dense your foliage will be when you paint it on. So just basically the amount of foliage you're painting down. As standard, you could just leave this at 1 as default, as you can change the density of your foliage in the details panel, which we'll get to shortly. The erase density is the same thing. It erases foliage. On the contrary to what you would believe, like you think 1, yeah, let's erase everything. No, it's not like that. 1, it doesn't erase anything, but if you set the erase density to 0, it erases whatever you want it to erase. So keep that in mind. I don't know why Epic have done it that way, I don't know. But yeah, so below that you have the single instance mode. This is where, like I say, you can place individual assets onto your scene. You can also do the drop down menu and cycle through selected. So if you have a load of foliage down here, or assets if you like, and you have them all selected and you click one, it'll spawn one, then spawn the next one, then spawn the next one after that. But I'll demonstrate that a bit later on. Placing current level, I don't know what that does. If you know what that does, then leave it in the comments below. Teach me, that'd be really good. Below this is the filters. As you can see, we have landscape, static mesh and blueprints, which are selected. That means you can paint foliage onto the landscape, onto static meshes like this cabin, and onto blueprints. Why anyone would want to paint foliage onto foliage? I mean, you could want, like I mentioned, the haunted scene before. You could paint down a load of paper and want to put some broken bottles on it, then you could paint foliage onto foliage. But translucent, I don't see the point in that, but that's just a personal preference. So to add things into your box here for the foliage, you simply hit the plus icon. You can simply click that and it adds the foliage in, and you can start painting. I got to paint. Not working. I need to select it, that's why. You can now see that I have the foliage ring, or sphere if you like, and you can increase that size. As you can see there, make it even bigger, like so. But we'll reduce that back down to a fairly decent size. We're going to remove this because we're not going to use this asset. That's from another pack. Okay, so what we want to do now is add some foliage into here. So we're going to come to our Megascans folder for now, and as you can see, I've got some filters set up. To set these filters up, I'll reset them. You just click on this little drop down and choose. So I'm going to choose static mesh, and you'll see that they've all come alive. If you have these rocks in here as well and you don't want to show them, you can change this. Go to foliage, go to static mesh foliage. You can deselect the static mesh and it will just show foliage. So let's go ahead and add some of this into our foliage tool. So what I want to start with is these two. I'll get that one as well. I'll get a couple of bushes in there. I'm going to get that bush and that one. Let's add some colour in here as well. So some lemongrass. We definitely need grass, so these weeds as well. I think just a couple more, that'll do for now. Once you've selected what you want, you just simply click on one of the selected ones, click and hold, and then drag it into your foliage type. These are already pre-compiled, so you may get it where it looks like your engine has crashed. It really hasn't, it's just compiling the shaders, and just hold fire and let the engine finish doing its job in the background. And if it's taking quite a long time, then don't hesitate to pause the video and unpause it when you get your shaders compiled. So now you can see we've got a load of foliage actors into our foliage tool. To be able to use any of these, you can see I will not be able to paint any of these. There's nothing selected. To select a foliage that you want, this one's selected actually. It's gone and painted to, I think. Yeah, you can see in there. Just there, the little things. Let's just erase them. We're getting erased. I can't hardly see them. My DLS is set to best performance because I'm rendering in the background. But that's a different thing. You can get DLS here. You have to import the plugin. I've got it set to ultra performance because of the rendering in the background. But yeah, so let's move on. What we're going to start with is the grass. We all want to put grass down first. I'm going to select it. So as you can see here, yours will not look like this, or it shouldn't. If it's the first time you're using the foliage tool, it'll all be open. But with my workflow, I tend to, when I come in to things like this, I'll close them all, and then it's a little bit more neater, and then I'll open what I need. So let's go through this then quick. So here at the top is your mesh, which is selected here. If you want to preview this mesh, you just simply click this folder and it'll take you in the content browser to that folder, like so. Below that is your component class. This is to do with blueprints, just leave that default. Below that is advanced, where you can override your materials. So what this is, like many of mine, I have my own master materials. So if I import a Quixel asset, I'll apply that asset to my master material, or should I say I apply my master material to that asset. It still works the same, but the functionality of my shaders I feel are better, but that's just me. Probably being big-headed, I don't know. But simply you could just apply your material instance here for your asset, and it'll override the Quixel material. But I tend to do it out of tool, so I wouldn't do it in the Foliage Tool, but that's just the option you've got. So moving on from the mesh, go to painting. This is where you can set the density. Like I said before, with this paint density, I always just leave it at 1 and change the density in here for each instance. As you can see, they're all different. But I would do that. I change my density there, so if I click here now, you'll see that I get a bit of grass. This size here, yours will be at default, which is 1 and 1, so it'll just paint normally. I tend to change mine to 1.2 and 3.1, if you like, and that'll give me a fairly decent size of the foliage. That means I can leave the density at a low number, like this. Below that is the radius. The radius is basically the distance from one static mesh to another. So if I increase this to like 50, like so, and I paint, you'll see that the foliage is a little bit more spread out than previous. So if I reduce this back to 0, you'll see I'll be able to get all my foliage in there now. Like so, what I'm going to do with this grass is I'm going to paint down some. Before I start painting and resuming with the description here, I want to take our attention back to here. You have landscape ticked, that means you can paint on your landscape. If you don't have it ticked, you can't paint on your landscape, but you can paint on the static mesh because static mesh is enabled. So if I paint over here now, you'll see that the grass types are going on the static mesh. So I'm just going to raise this. We got any inside? No. So if I deselect static meshes and then paint down here, you'll see that I can paint down here quite happily and not get any on the actual cabin itself. Just going to paint some down here because that's we're creating a bit of a scene, aren't we? So I'm going to just paint some of the grass down. I'm going to increase the density to maybe 300. So I just start painting this down. I'm not affecting that static mesh because I've unchecked it. We'll do this and now it'll all pop up. You'll see that it looks like the colour of the grass is changing. That is not the colour, it's just the LODs. So if I move away from it, you'll see that it's changing there. You can change these settings within the mesh material. So if you click on mesh, come to folder and you'll find the mesh material here. Double click that and it'll open that static mesh up, and you can see at the top left here I've got LOD1. Let's open this up a little bit more. At the top left you have LOD1. The more I move away, LOD2, LOD3, and that's the maximum, I think. Where's the LODs? LODs? Oh, there you go. Look, LOD 0, 1, 2 and 3 are all selected. This is kind of out the scope of this tutorial, so I'm not going to bother messing about in here, but I just thought I'd showcase where you could change your LODs if you wanted to. So coming back to our scene, now we've got some grass painted down on our scene. We've got to carry on with some of these options down here. Got my density at 300, which is fine. Below that is a radius, so like I said before, you have a single instance mode override radius. So if you're planting down single assets onto your scene, you can change the radius here. I rarely, if ever, use that. So you can just leave that off at the minute. You'll never use it, to be honest. You just go on single mode. And with single mode, you don't really need a radius. So yeah, you don't really need a radius because you're planting one foliage down at a time. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I was looking at my phone. So under that we have scaling. We've got uniform at the minute. You can change this to free. What this is, the size of your foliage at the minute. Like you can see, I've got uniform. I always leave it like that. and I could just change the X, Y and Z in the min and max here to the size I want. And if you come down to 3, you'll have the ability to change the X, Y and Z scale of your asset. That's completely down to you. You can also lock the X and Y, so your X and Y can't be changed. Well, you can change it, but it'll just keep it like that. And you can change the Z subsequently for the rest of them as well. But most of the time you'll leave it on uniform and just change the size there. In advance you have vertex color masks. This is quite advanced for this kind of tutorial. Eventually on the channel we will come around this. Basically it just allows you to max out it allows you to mask out on different vertex colors when you're painting on vertex mesh. But yeah, like I say, that's for another tutorial. And below that you have placement. So what placement is, the Z offset, it allows you to place your assets under the landscape or under your mesh if you want. So if I put in here like a -50, then a max of -90, and I start to paint on the landscape, as you can see it's not actually doing it because the foliage is under the landscape. Like so. If I come back, get rid of that. Like so. Let's just get rid of that, otherwise it'll slow the machine down. So that's what the Z offset does. So with that you could say you have a rock asset. I can mega scan static mesh, like a rock asset, and I put this in here. I'll showcase it more in detail later. I'll deselect that actually. I'll deselect that. I'll select this and do a -30 and then a -50, like so, and I'll reduce this to 25. And I do this, you'll see that it's gone under the landscape, like so. But if you get it right, so if I do maybe minimum of -20, maximum of -50, it's still, but they're just under. So if I go -5 and maximum of -10, oh no, let's do -5, maximum -3, like so. If I do this now, you'll see that the rocks are there, but they're slightly under the landscape. This dark side of the asset is under the landscape, as you can see here. And what this is good for is if you're painting down assets like this and you're using runtime virtual textures, this will blend very nicely with your landscape. If you're not sure what runtime virtual textures are, I do have a video, a couple of videos on runtime virtual textures. So yeah, well that's what the Z offset will do. Your align to normals, on your landscape, how can I depict this? I've come out of foliage mode to try and better explain this a bit. I'm going to bring a basic cylinder in, like so. I'm going to scale this right down, like so, scale it up. Okay, so every part of your landscape has a normal, and that normal has a vertices, and we can imagine, what's that over there in the distance? We can imagine this cylinder here is the direction of your vertices. So at the minute, because it's flat, it'll just be pointing up. But if we come to this slope here, we'll go to it, F on the keyboard. As you can see now, there's a bit of a curve here. So if I come out a little bit and rotate this, that is basically telling me that the vertices are going to be pointing that way, and then the more we go down, the more the vertices will be pointing out like that. And the way this is in conjunction with our foliage tool, as you can see, my landscape has gone black. This is quite a common issue with runtime virtual textures. If this is an issue you've got and you've got runtime virtual textures, to fix this you could simply come to your base color of your runtime virtual texture volume, deselect it and select it again. It'll come back to normal. Okay, so like I was saying, let's deselect that, get our grass back. Align to normals, that's what the normals are, but that cylinder I've just displayed, that's your normal direction, so your asset will be aligned to the normals of the landscape, or your static mesh if you like. You can also average the normal out, so if you so it'll give an average rotation on your asset depending off the normal. Align max angle, you won't use that, there's no need to showcase that. And random pitch your angle, it's very rare you'll use that unless you're painting big steel girders. But if it gets to a point where you feel like you've got to use these three settings, that means you should be placing the asset solely on its own, freely, without the foliage tool. You'll never use that. You have a ground slope angle. To showcase this, we'll come to the mountain over here. And what the angle is at the minute is set to 0 to 45. So we're going to untick these. We're going to tick this rock asset again. So at the minute we're set here. Oh, hang on, my placement. So, I need to make sure. There, yeah. It's not the placement's off, it's only size. I'm going to get rid of the Z offset. And I'm going to increase the size, so this is going to be 3.5, sorry, 5.1. So now we can see it a little bit better. So what we're doing now at the minute, our ground slope angle is 0 to 45 degrees. So I could increase this density for 1. It's still tiny, isn't it? If you watch now, I can come across the landscape, and the moment we get onto this slope, it'll stop painting the rock on the slope, like so, but then it'll carry on painting when we get down here, like so, but it'll stop there. So, like at the minute, there's still 3 of them somewhere, but anyway, doesn't matter. So if I change this slope angle, maybe I put 45 on the minimum, and then 90 on the maximum, and what this is now going to do, it's not going to allow me to paint on the flat surfaces. Yes, it is. That's a bit weird. Is there something I've not got right there? It's not painting there, but it's painting there. That's a bit strange. Because if I set the minimum angle to start painting at 45, if I go 45 and the maximum 75, let's see. Now this should technically paint on the slopes, but it is not. It's painting there. Painting on that bit of slope. What about if I set this to 90 and then 45? You can't do that, no. 75. Still can't paint on the slopes, but I can paint down there. That's a bit strange. Maybe I've got something wrong there, something a bit wrong way around. I don't know. But basically, you could change the slope angle at which you want to paint. That should have worked. It's quite bugging me why it's not working. It's allowing me to paint on the slope. What about if I set that to 0? It'll still, it's just allowing me. It'll still paint on there. But yeah, that's a bit strange why that isn't working for me. It's not allowing me to paint on a slope more than 45 degrees, which is fine, which is right. But if I set the minimum to 45, it should work. But anyway, yeah, trying to work that out will just make the tutorial even longer for something that you probably won't even use. I'm going to delete that so I haven't got random things everywhere. Okay, so we'll go back to our grass. We'll come down to, so we're just on slope angle. You have the height down here where you can set the minimum and maximum amount of height where you don't want to paint. You'll probably never use that, to be honest, in all honesty. Advanced. Advanced is landscape layers, similar to the vertex color mask. This is quite advanced. It's where you can create, so if I come here, you can right click and go materials, you can start creating material layers in your landscape material. I've not shown anything about material layers yet on my channel because it's been quite basic, beginner style if you like. So I feel it'll be good to showcase landscape layers at a later date. It's quite advanced, so I don't want to throw anyone in the deep end. But to assign, this is just basically saying to paint this type of foliage onto this landscape layer. That's all that's doing. But like I say, it's quite advanced that. So like you could exclusion landscape layer. So if you have a, say you have a landscape layer that's set to slopes only, based off a mask, and you apply the exclusion there, you just got to use the same name as what's in your landscape layer. It won't paint foliage onto that layer of this type. So yeah, but like I say, that's quite advanced. So instance settings, this is the last part we really need to look at. Everything else like your physics, scalability and all that is not needed, to be honest. So instance settings, so you can set your static meshes to static or movable. Your cull distance, that's the distance of which your grass will display, but your LODs take care of that. At the minute it's just, let's slow this down, you can see it's changing the LODs the further away I get. And what this means is if I change the cull distance, so if I set this to 1, you'll see all the grass disappears. Set that to 0, should come back. Let's just reset that to default. If I set this to 25, still that's not high enough. 500, still gets rid of it because it's the maximum, that's why. If I set this to 25, no, still gets. What about if I go to a minimum of 5,000? Right. And then a maximum of 6,000. And this might work. There you go. As you can see, the grass disappears. Let's reduce that, 1,000. It's slightly different. So if I increase this to 3,000, you'll see that it's getting rid of half of it. There you go, now the grass disappears. This really massively helps on performance if you set this up right, which you can see if I do it slowly. You'll see my LODs are changing here around this area, like so. And then you can see now the grass is disappearing at the same time. So the further away I get, the grass disappears. Like I say, this really helps with performance. So it's good to get used to that, the cull distance. I could showcase more of this when we start using foliage types, which is the way I do it a lot, by using volumes or using my landscape material. But you could set the cull distance here as well. Below that is cast shadows, pretty self-explanatory. If you watch the grass, when I uncheck it, it stops casting a shadow and casts a shadow. You also affect dynamic indirect lighting. You can check this, but it'll just increase performance. You cast dynamic shadows, it's the same. The dynamic shadows compared to cast shadows, shadows are just shadows. Dynamic shadows is when your sun rotation changes in your game, the shadow changes on the asset as well, but if you stop that, then it won't change dynamically. So yeah, the rest of it is pretty much to do with collision. But if you're at the stage where you're sorting collision out, you'll probably do that within your volume or your blueprint. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the foliage tool. It's like I said at the beginning of the video, the foliage tool is a powerful tool. You do have limitations, and there are far easier ways to do foliage, which I'll do a couple of videos about. Hey guys, it's me from the future. At this point in the video, it has now come to an end. There's no much more I can pretty much show with the paint tool in this tutorial. From now though, I am going to set dress the scene we've got from what you've seen at the beginning of the video. So if you want to learn some techniques and some workflow, I'd recommend carry on watching, but if not, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you. Bye. What I am going to do now is I'm going to set dress this scene just using the foliage tool. I'm probably going to use the Quixel trees as well to set dress. So you're free to watch if you want, but as a tutorial side of things, I think that's about it for the details of foliage. I can't think of anything else, but like I say, these other particular ways you can do the foliage without using the tool. I tend to use it if I'm doing a tiny scene like this. Let's set this up a little bit like so. But I'm going to just do a little bit of scene dressing now so we can have some sort of outcome from this tutorial. You're free to watch if you want. I will still tell you what I'm doing. So for me, that's my grass. What I am going to do is do some Quixel trees. So if I come down here, go to Blackadder. So, and then I am going to drag in these three, like so, and I'm going to drag these three. I may have to compile them shaders. Yeah. Okay, now the shaders are compiled. I'm going to add some bushes in. So I'm going to add this one in, this one and this one. Did I get some tall trees as well? Let's add these in. We'll get these couple of these tall trees. Drag these tall trees in. Now to compile shaders again. Okay, and now all my shaders are compiled. It took a bit longer than normal because of my rendering. Okay, so like I say, the tutorial's pretty much over. I've gone over the basic tools that you're ever going to use on the foliage tool. I think that covers most of it. I'll close these down a bit. I don't need plane, yeah I do. So what I'm going to do now is a little bit of set dressing to showcase what we can do here. Let's just deselect all these, like so, and then I'm just going to place, I'm going to use a single tool, and I'm going to place a couple of these trees down. If I do this and go boosh. As you can see there, it looks a little wonky. It kind of looks alright. If I click on this and deselect align to normals and erase that, let's go back actually, it's not doing it. If I deselect that, align to normals, just click it, it'll be vertical. Like so. I'm going to put another one here, and another one over here. And then I'm going to deselect that and I'm going to select this tree. Align to normal is still unchecked. I'm just going to plonk one here like so, one here like so. I'll go to one. I'm going to put one over here like that. Now I've done that, I'm going to deselect that. I want some tall trees. I'm going to select these tall trees. I'm going to put one right here, one here, one here like so. Just one. I'm going to put one here. One in here. One here and here. Still looks a bit barren behind there, so what I am going to do is select this one and unselect that one. I'm just going to plank one of these here, one of these here, one of these there. Just one. Looks a little better. So that is a couple of trees in there. What about this tree? Have we got any more of these selected? No, just that one. I'm going to plank this one here, put one here. Do that. Plank one here, one there. Like so. You're never going to see that really. I'm going to put one here actually. No, I'm not. I'm going to use one of these other ones. Deselect that. I'm going to select this one. This here, like so. And I'll put one here as well. Okay. So now we have some trees in our scene. I'm going to want some of these bushes as well. Deselect that. Select this bush. See how big these are. Quite big. I'll put one here as well. One here. What I'm doing now is just basically hiding the background. One here. One here. Like so. And then I'm going to select this one. These are not that big, I don't think. Not at all. Let's have a look. Oh dear. Yeah, they're quite small, aren't they? So I'm going to come onto that and I am going to select this. I'm going to put 3.5 and 6.1. So, and this will make it a little bit bigger. I know they look a bit silly, but it's just basically I'm blocking off. Select this one. I'm going to use the paint tool for this one. So, oh dear. Oh. Just let me machine catch up. I don't know why I started rendering. I'll do this a bit. I'll do this a bit. Started mesh selected. I'm going to come over here a little bit. Do this. Just decrease that. Maybe set this to 30. No. And come here. Come here. Come there. Okay. What I want now is a bit of colour. So I'm going to deselect that. I'll select this. I'm going to select this. And I'm going to select this one. So if I'll come to this now. So it's them three. So I select that, select this one and that one. The density is fine. Let's just see what it does. Oh, that's nice. Density is not fine actually. I'm going to set that to 50. And give it a radius of 15. Plunk these down a little bit like so. Get some close to the camera so it's nice and bright. I do want some more colour in here, so I'm going to deselect these. Get some colour here. Let's select these. I'm going to have a density of 35, a range of 15 again. I'm going to change the size to 1.8 to 2.9, like so. I'm just going to plank some of these in there and give it a bit of colour around there, like this. And then from here, I'll put some over here as well. What I want to do is add some mega scans. How big are these? Just drag one in. They're very small actually, aren't they? How big are these? Oh, that's better. Okay, so I'm going to come out of foliage mode. Select this. And put this like here. Sink it down a little bit. Put this over here. I'm going to rotate it. Give it a bit of a random rotation if you like. Like so. What's the other one? So. My machine is really lagging now because of that render. I can be on about the old tutorial. That'll do. What I am going to do, if you see, I disable my post-processing. That's what it looks like. I've set this processing up before the tutorial. My height fog as well. Like so. What I want to do is increase my exponent height fog and my volumetric fog. Extension scale, there you go. Like so. And if I come back to here, like so. Control 1, I'm going to set this to cinematic. It's 1. So now set this up. What I want to do is get this rock here. Oh gosh. Just the rock, please. There you go. And move this over here, like so. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, like this. So what this is doing is just obscuring that bit of area there. So, okay, if we come to my directional light. Where is it? Directional light is right here in front of me. It's not moving though. There you go. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to change a bit of the rotation for the directional light. Like so. So you can just see twinkles of the sunlight in here. Like this, exponential height fog. What's going on with it there? Choose that down a little bit. Okay. So what I've done now is just done a bit of a scene dress. I mean, you could come into your post-process volume. As you see, I've got my global illumination to plug in. That's related to the DLS settings. If you want to know how to install the DLSS onto Unreal Engine, then leave a comment in the comment section below. What I am going to do is get my volumetric cloud, and I'm going to reduce the amount of cloud I'm getting. In fact, I'm going to turn it off. It's proper lagging now. As you can see, a bit of lag. I don't know, it looks nice that the cloud like that. Height. Let's just set these to default. Yeah. At the minute, I'm happy with how that looks. Let's F11 it. That's one. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with how this looks. It's a nice little tiny scene that we've done in during this tutorial. Everything you see on the screen here is free, apart at the time of this video this is not free. This little cabin, at the time of this video this cabinet is free, but you may be watching this in the future and it won't be free anymore. So my apologies for that, but there will be assets for free. But as you can see, yeah, we have created a little bit of a scene, and we've learned how to use the paint tool. So if you found this tutorial and a bit of a demonstration towards the end at least useful, and you feel quite confident getting into the paint tool, then leave a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you again.